before you start listening, you should realise I did this recording last year. What I've done is actually most of my recordings were done last year. At the moment, although a few are new, and they're all on my laptop waiting to be put up. So, let's listen to Tim Woods, an extraordinary man. Hello, welcome to Stand Up, Speak Out UK, and this is the guest show. Now, we always say that's an original title, but, and don't thank me for it all. Today, my guest is Tim Wood, and Tim's going to speak about a subject I never thought about before, voting and homelessness. So, thank you for coming, Tim.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
So, what do you have to say about this subject? It's
one of my passions is that everyone has a right to have a say in their future. You know, it should be a basic human right to be able to have a voice. And it's something that's increasingly harder and harder and harder for rough sleepers and people who are homeless to do. As layers of bureaucracy and red tape come up, and most recently the need to have photographic ID to vote. Recent reports said that up to 17% of people who turned up to vote were turned away or were unable to have a say in their future because of these new restrictions. And it's something that I would like to see, help there for people who are homeless, who may not have an address, may not have access to the right documents to get that ID, to give them that power and that voice and their say in their own future.
How would you alleviate it? Because the cost, I'm thinking about the cost of
Right.
documents.
First of all, it's always been hard for people who are rough sleepers with no address to vote. Some charities were very good at giving postcodes to park benches in the past, and they have been able to get around it that way and get people registered to vote. Now, with the need for photographic ID, councils at the moment can give you a piece of paper with a pretty picture of you on it. However, it's getting access to the digital requirements to go and do that, or to get an interview at your registration office to get that paper that entitles you to vote.
Sorry, please.
Yeah, so there is a way of doing it. It's just harder and harder for rough sleepers.
I do remember I slept in the West End.
Mm-hmm.
I like to be posh, of course. But I do remember the day centre where I was. I can't remember if it was a booth, but there was some facility to put your vote in at that place. And my address was the day centre, as I know, fixed address. Would it be helpful that way?
Yes, indeed. But we need, I'm volunteering at a night shelter at the moment, and it's amazing how many people, paid employees of charities, aren't aware of the new restrictions, and they don't know that they need to have photo ID to vote now. So if they're not aware, are they informing the guests, the clients? Are we working in time? We've got the London mayoral elections next year. It's critical that the people who need help the most can have a say in their future.
I'm going to act as devil's advocate to you. How important do you think the person on the street thinks their vote counts?
Or even the person in a house. We have voter apathy throughout the country at all levels, from rough sleepers right the way up to multi-millionaires. And if you look at the turnout at local elections, you look at the turnout at general elections, you never get anything like 80%. I think we do need, everyone has the chance to vote, and that's the important bit now. Is that everyone should have the chance to vote. Whether you use that opportunity is up to you, but that opportunity should be available to you regardless.
Yeah, because it's like at the last general election, I was living in South London, I won't say what the place was like, but at least it was a place to put my head down. And I actually, because I was totally disappointed with Conservative rule. And I couldn't believe what the Labour Party is. I voted Green out of demonstrating against to show my disgust, even though I knew that that the parties, it won't affect what's a Labour council, whatever. But my question then to you is, if they've got a right to vote, do you think the representatives of the parties who are standing for a seat should come and speak to them?
I think, when we're canvassing, when politicians are canvassing, they should speak to everybody.
Mm.
I mean, my particular thing at the moment, if you look at the way trends are going in the mayoral election for next year, is do we want those that don't want ULEZ to be the only people who've got a say?
Yeah, that's a big
That will
thing.
skew it entirely. If the only people who can vote are rich people with 4x4s, it's going to really not represent the most Londoners, and certainly probably not the rough sleepers.
Well,
and so this is why it's crucial that everybody can have a say, not just those who've got the right documents, who know how the system works, who know they've got to take their accepted ID with them, but that everybody can turn up and everybody can have a say in their future.
Well, I think that actually this was brought in by the Conservative Party through Parliament, that they put, and actually it backfired on them, because there was an apathy at the last general local elections.
But the requirement for photo ID has only recently come through. Cynics amongst us would say that it is a way of discrimination, and only those who are more up to date with what's going on around them will know about the requirement. We know they said, I think on the BBC, they said 1 in 7 people in certain wards were turned away for not having photo ID with them at the local elections. And if that happens in London, who are the 1 in 7 that are turned away?
And it's like, for me,
17% they're saying at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, I can use I actually checked on this because I'm a senior citizen. I got a freedom pass. That is acceptable ID. But in other places, I want to have, been asked, the only photo ID I must provide, I can provide, will be a driving license or a passport. I don't have a passport. I don't drive. I don't have a passport, and the cost of a passport is obscene.
But there is another way that is free,
and
that is to get the A4 piece of paper from your electoral returning officer at your council with your picture on it, and he or she is happy that you are who you say you are, and that is free. However, that knowledge is not being pushed out to people. So when they turn up, if they want to vote, number one, are you registered to vote? My opinion is that every single homeless charity, every single provider should be doing all they can to make sure that those on, rough sleepers, people who are going into homeless shelters, are given that opportunity to register. Number two is the voting process should be explained. We have 3 different levels of voting in this country. Used to be 4, then we left Europe. But the first one is your general elections, and that's only if you're a UK citizen with a right to vote, or Irish, I believe. Then you've got local elections, and the people who can vote in those is a lot broader. And then you've got the mayoral elections, and people who can vote in that is even wider still. So you might not be able to vote in the general election, but there's certainly going to be one election that you'll be able to vote in if you've got that ID and if you're registered to vote.
That brings up a question for me, Tim, because I never knew this.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, it was anybody who had the right to vote in the UK, normally of birth, or even if they're of a foreign, they're registered in some way. It's a lot more complicated than I thought.
It is a lot more complicated, and this is what a lot of people don't know. Local elections, there are more people who are entitled to vote in local elections than general. And local elections is about local issues. And that's perhaps where we need to have the biggest voice.
I actually would disagree with you. I
Mhm.
think that even in general elections, it's the same thing.
Oh,
Example, we talk about ULEZ,
yeah,
is this thing of not bringing vehicles in of a
yeah.
certain type, which was started by Khan in London.
But I'll correct you there. It was started by Boris Johnson.
Really?
Yes. So
Another thing we can
it
blame him
started with
for.
congestion charge. Then we had the low emission zone, and then the ULEZ. The expansion, the latest expansion is Sadiq Khan.
And it's funny because actually the Conservative Party are using a weapon against Labour.
Yes. Yeah.
Which,
And this is my biggest issue is that will ULEZ be the the defining issue of who's going to be the next mayor of London?
it could be.
And when you've got the people who are perhaps worst affected by air quality and air pollution, are the less likely to be able to vote. But those with their 4x4s and their SUVs and their gas guzzlers will be voting for anyone other than Sadiq Khan, just so they don't have to pay £12.50 a day or whatever.
Well, a little aside is I like the cat. I live in London.
Mhm.
When I see, and there's a guy downstairs, I'm in an old age complex, and there's this guy who actually uses the parking bays of the complex because even though he lives across the road, he's got a Range Rover, right? Massive, great car, which is perfect for driving in the country. And a lot of people have status. At one time, as you know, people had 4x4s for status symbols. And I'm thinking, what the hell they drive in London?
Chelsea tractors, we used to call them.
Yeah. But it is this thing of why do people not get the right vehicles? I
Well,
would admit,
I would say, that is a separate issue. The most important one is that everyone has the say in whether we should have ULEZ or not just
yeah.
those with the Chelsea tractors.
Mm. Well, I must admit, I forgot about the mayor. I know one thing, the general election I'll be covering because I'm interested in that. I talk quite
Well,
a lot about politics.
cover the London mayoral elections and the local council ones, and that'll give you practice for the general election.
Well, I might call you in when it comes to the mayoral elections. I have.
Do you want me to bring my swingometer?
Yeah, bring your swingometer and you can do.
Yes, and it will point from those registered to vote and against those who can't have a say.
Whereas people.
Well, actually, this is the whole point. Being registered to vote is you will not. You may well be registered, but if you haven't got that document that says you are who you say you are, or you won't get that vote.
That is interesting, really, because I'm thinking about my own. I was told by one company I needed money off them because I lost the actual form that proved I needed the money off them. Is I have to bring in photo ID. I said I had my freedom pass,
Mhm.
and they said it's not photo ID. I'm wondering if I got the document off the council. Like, I will get a passport generally. I hope to go abroad. I hope to go to Wales. I like going abroad.
Yep.
And but this thing of ID, I personally feel, let me put this to you.
Mhm.
The reason they brought in the photo ID was a certain sector of society. I'm not talking only about homelessness voting at all. What would you say on that?
I okay. Sitting on the fence, I would say I perfectly understand the way that it's been brought over as so there can be no interference in elections and fraud. However, is it a solution to a problem that actually existed or not? And the Electoral Commission would say that there is no voter fraud in this country. So the more cynical amongst us would say, is it just a barrier to the lower paid, the rough sleepers, poorer people who are traditionally more likely to vote left? Is it a barrier to them getting to the polls?
Because I don't know if you're aware of what's happening in America about the voting. By now, it's all we are recording this while the trials are going on of
Absolutely. So let's hope you haven't got a worldwide audience, or if you have, that we're not going to be found in contempt of court
Well, I will be comment. I have commented.
and join Trump in the talk.
Yes, because they've actually, in some states, they've actually stopped the black voter from actually voting.
Well, this would be, again, if you look at demographics in this country, if you're black, you're more likely to earn less than white people. I don't like using the term social economic classes, but it's what they use to define people. And you are more likely to be in a lower social economic class, and more likely then to have to rely on tax credits, universal credit, to make up the difference in your earnings, and therefore more likely to be in need, but now less likely to have a vote.
Yeah, I totally.
I would say in that case, it is definitely discriminatory.
Yes. And I think personally, when I brought this thing about photo ID, they were thinking about that. They wanted a certain segment.
Yeah.
And it bit them on the back, really.
Well, has it? It's become law.
Yeah. No, I'm saying they lost a lot of seats.
17% of people who are more likely to vote left than right won't be voting. Is that biting them in the bum, or have they scored the victory on that? The present administration.
Okay, I'll put you a friend of mine who's I wouldn't say born again. The only party for him is the Conservative Party. I think he's wrong, but I don't believe in sane people. And we were talking, and I might have mentioned this before, ladies and gentlemen. We were talking about it one weekend. I'm not going to, I think he's wrong, but he thinks I'm wrong, so that's okay. And I said to him, how do you feel about Rishi Sunak? And he turned around to me, and this is the weekend after the conference. So I might have mentioned this before, ladies and gentlemen. He says, I don't really like Sunak. So I said, who would you like to be in? I want Liz Truss. And I'm thinking, Liz Truss at the conference repeated the same speech she did but try and get to leadership. There was no difference. Like she hadn't learnt she's the equivalent of Lady Jane Grey, if you remember history, who ruled for 9 days.
If you remember her.
Yeah, but nobody remembers her.
Not that old.
Yeah, I would, because I was like, oh.
This is the classic Voltaire comment, isn't it? That I may not agree with what you're saying, but I defend to the death your right to say it.
Yeah.
And the same way, I might not agree with who you want to vote for, but I will defend to the death your right to have a say.
True, that's what you're saying. I agree. People should have a right to vote. But to talk about somebody when she repeated the same speech, he hadn't followed that. I'll give you another example. When I was a young man in Tower Hamlets, I lived with my father, and it was the local elections. And I said to my father, Dad, I think I'm going to vote Liberal Democrats. And he turned around to me and said, the classic speech you hear is, no, we are a Labour family, you vote Labour. And that's the same thing as my friend.
That does go on. And even now, but I mean, and why not? Is there, there are lots of people, this family's always voted Tory, this family's always, it does make it difficult when you've got lots of smaller parties that never seem to get off the ground, unless there's one particular issue. But it's, that aside, it's at least those people have got the right to turn up at the polling booth. And they're not going to get turned away.
To me, I would always encourage, what I would do is, okay, I will admit I can't vote Conservative. I had 13 years by now, 14 years by then. And they're still blaming Labour for what's happening.
But I think perhaps rather than just, doing the general election, if we look at things like, for me personally, would be the London mayoral elections, where that I would vote completely different to how I would vote in a general election. and I have done, on how I think that candidate is going to, what that person is going to do for me and my community. And it could be, and very often is very different to how I would vote in a general election. And so, but having that right to do it and to voice my opinion, it is of massive significance to me. And I want everyone to have that voice, to be able to have the opportunity. And I think what we should be doing is, and I'm very grateful for you for this podcast, that we can draw attention to the issue, because there are so many people who do not know that they cannot just turn up like they always did, that they will be required. And when they get their voting card through the letterbox, are they going to read it all, or are they just going to think it's the same as usual? So we do need to highlight the awareness of, if you haven't got photo ID, acceptable photo ID, how you go about contacting your council, your returning officer, and getting one. How you can do it if you're homeless and you haven't got an address. And let's be proactive in this. Let's go out and say, look, here's a postcode, get yourself registered. I'm very happy that one of the charities I work closely with, that we are actually making this a big issue, and I'm very pleased about that. But even then, as I say, on Monday night, I was quite shocked that the people who aren't aware, and they're paid employees. So we still need to get the message across the whole charity, as well as to, we call them guests, as well as to our guests.
Well, I'll give you an example. Lack of knowledge, what you don't think. One of my friends was waiting for the increase in his benefit. And he's on universal credit. So he contacted through the journal. The reply was, if there is an increase, you'll get it. When the general knowledge that everybody was getting an increase, it was like, we don't know.
I have a similar issue to that. I have email alerts set up on the government website for the cost of living payment dates. And I will be the first person, or one of the first people, to know when you will get it. And yet I know people who are asking their job coaches and what have you, who are on universal credit, and they're told a whole load of rubbish.
And these are the people.
I say to them, ask me. And then, of course, I know the moment that it's announced, I get an email saying, but yeah, you'll be amazed that all these people who you think should know will either give you misinformation or no information.
And that's the main thing we can refer to this about voting.
Absolutely, misinformation.
Well, you could go to some official in the local council, and he won't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
the person to go to is, the returning officer, the registration department. You will find your details for your local council online. If you go to your local library, they should be able to assist you. The other one who should, go to your key worker.
Yeah.
If you have a key worker, go to your charity, your day centre, and say, look, this is happening. Help me. Yeah. I want to say, let's face it, the other thing you mentioned, universal credit, there are still millions of people on legacy benefits. And waiting in limbo to be migrated to universal credit so they don't lose any money. And even then, they won't get the increases, because what will happen over time is, instead of, you'll just get the same amount until it matches universal credit. And they're trying to say people will be better off. Yes, that's another issue. But one of the things that Labour said was they were going to get rid of universal credit and certainly stop the migration. They've been a bit quiet on it recently, but I mean, it's another reason why, the poorest among us, and, if you're on a legacy benefit, you may well be on ESA and have health conditions, and or you could be on even some people, I think, on incapacity benefit. I think some still are. And but you need that say. You need to be able to say, I don't want to lose money.
Well, I've written
have that vote.
Yeah, I've written reams on universal credit. And when it first came out, I was doing some voluntary work teaching in a day centre, and I spoke to the staff there, not the guys who were homeless, and they said this will start more homelessness than it has, in my opinion. That's why the figures have gone up 29% this year in London. You've got me lot to think about, really, Tim.
Well, let's not just think about it. Well, think about it first, and let's do something about it.
Yeah.
Let's tell our friends.
Sorry.
Let's tell our friends.
Yeah.
Ideas.
Well, I would say
I've got someone coming to see me tomorrow, and the first thing I'm going to do is, have you got your? Right, let's get online and let's get it sent to your new address.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. I thought we were just going to speak about voting, but this is really about public rights. And
well, you can't really speak about voting if you're turned away from the polling booth.
Yeah,
and it's
this
getting
channel,
people, and it's about, no one's saying you must vote. What I'm saying is you must have the opportunity, and the same opportunity for you outside Top Man on, I know it's closed now, on Oxford Street, as the person in Belmont Towers or whatever, with their 4x4 outside.
And don't forget, you must vote for Tim Wood for his local campaign, because you should be a politician. I've been told that.
Really?
I'd hate to be a politician.
We'd be opposites. Do you know why the red and green benches are so far apart, don't you?
Why?
It's 2.5 swords lengths.
My God. What incredible information. Tim's a fascinating person. He's another one that's on one of these panels that I've met. And sometimes he says, that's amazing. I've got to get my sword out. But
it will be 2.5 swords lengths apart.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end. I am definitely going to ask you to come back for the mayoral elections at least.
It would be my pleasure to come back, with my swingometer.
Also, and the general elections and the election for everything. Human rights is one thing that's on my logo. I truly believe that's the reason why I asked people like Tim to come along. Because although I could talk hours on these subjects, he's very knowledgeable about more things that I thought I knew. I've now learned. And that's what we have to do, Lane. It's holding an open mind. I would say one thing about the voting. What I do is, although I said I cannot vote Conservative, they've had 14 years by the time the elections come around, I would still read all the manifestos and decide on that. And probably that's what I'll do with the mayoral thing, listen to all the speeches. But remember one thing, promises can be broken, as we've discovered with this particular government that this year. There's several bills not going to go through.
Yep.
So they're saying things that they think you want to hear. But thank you again, Tim.
It's absolutely my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Ian. And as I say, perhaps the biggest takeaway from this is going to be, it's not who you vote for, it's having the right to have a vote.
Bye for now. And if you found this interesting, please share this with one of your friends. Thank you very much, and goodbye.